All right, good morning and welcome to DRB University. I'm going to get started promptly just because we have a lot of good content in this unit, right? This unit is the unit on SiteWatch reporting, specifically focused on daily reporting activities and StatWatch as well. We'll be doing a bunch of hands-on kind of stuff in the both in the terminal controller and in Site Manager and SiteWatch Web. Our agenda for today, I think we just have one person attending today. So just to give you a good idea of what our focus is, we're going to focus on daily reports, things that you might run on a day-to-day basis in SiteWatch. We're going to talk about some operational reports, like things that are normally maybe not run every day, but are key insights into what normal everyday operations looks like. And we'll talk about plan reports as well as StatWatch, right? We'll dig a little bit into StatWatch here. So, like, there's a lot of in SiteWatch, there are a lot of reports you can run, right? There's two separate places where you can run reports from, actually three, right? There's Site Manager, which is like running on the computers at the car wash, right? There's SiteWatch Web, which makes those same kinds of reports and some additional reports available over the internet through the sitewatch.cloud website. And then also there's StatWatch, right? StatWatch is also very important. StatWatch uses a different set of information than like the general sales report and some of those other reports would use, but it is a key way of seeing how are we doing today? Am I meeting my business needs? Are we trending up? Are we trending down? Do I need to have more people on site? Do I need to send some people home, right? What does this look like compared to last year? All of these are important, and I would say that you may, at each car wash, run different reports day to day, but I want to talk about some specific ones that I think everybody would run from day to day. Again, if you're not familiar with SiteWatch Web or StatWatch, this is kind of what they look like, and I'll go to each of these as part of this presentation just to give you some perspectives here. But like if we talk about daily reporting, specifically when we talk about daily reporting, I want to talk about the things you run for, how do I get through my day, right? If I'm an express exterior car wash, what does that mean, right? Am I looking at the things I sold, the mix of the things that I sold? Am I trying to reconcile cash in my XPT? What are those types of things, right? I also want to see, like, site operations reports give me some views into what are the things that are normally happening, right? One of the strengths of reporting is in understanding what's normal, right? It's something that can be key to building security and trust at your organization. The requirements that you have of people on site for the things that they do with reporting or like that they include with reporting can go a long ways to those kinds of things. Site operations reports are ways of like finding opportunities to have better processes, to have maybe say there's a little bit too much risk here, right? And of course, like I talked about StatWatch, how are we doing right now? How does our day-to-day look like? Right? Not to preclude some of these other ones here, like under the heading of general manager, right? I may run the general sales report in different ways if I'm a general manager compared to being a store manager, right? If I've got multiple stores as part of my chain, I want to be able to say, okay, what is the business look like in a broader sense? Maybe I'm looking at some more statistics that are not necessarily in StatWatch but are more detailed, right? Those kinds of things are things that we can offer training on from DRB, and we can help you find the types of things that can help you make better choices throughout all of it. So I think that's the big benefit of reporting, right? You have financial benefits, obviously. We have a point of sale so that we can aggregate all of our sales, ease the workflows at the car wash, and be able to do our taxes, right? All those kinds of things factor in there. Labor, if you use the labor, like the time clock in SiteWatch, you can get a lot of good labor insights from different reports. And of course, we'll also talk briefly at the end about SaleViewer. SaleViewer is not a report in itself, but a way of understanding what goes into making a report. And again, the general sales report is the report that everybody runs. If say I'm not somebody who's involved in operations of the car wash, I'm somebody who's involved more of the financial side, right? The general sales report is still the report that I'm going to run a bunch of different things from. We'll also briefly talk about bank deposits, and I do have a whole section at the end about the past plan reports. So the general sales report, again, being the central report of SiteWatch, is it can be run directly from Site Manager, or it can be run from SiteWatch Web. And this is usually by default. You'll see that at the very top here, there's a format of Site Financial Detail Report. That's the default format that you're going to run the general sales report for. And that includes all of the things that we've sold in the period of time that we run it for whatever sites or site groups that we run it for. And then, of course, there's other things we can filter by too, right? We can say, I only want to look at one terminal, right? That could be used to do cash reconciliation on a particular terminal. Think of balancing a cash drawer, right? I do my deposit. Do I have an overshort for my deposit, right? I can run it for just that particular terminal. If I want to pay commissions out over the types or mix of things that are sold, I might run it by employee to see, like, okay, for this particular employee, what did they sell when they were assigned the current user or the wash salesperson at a site, okay? And, the general sales report can be kind of basic, or it can be very intimidating. Like, this is an example general sales report, from 2018 from an organization that's a full service that offers like a convenience store and a lube shop, and their general sales report for a month is something like 10 pages long, right? It's very dense. They sold lots of things in that period of time. Lots and lots of things. So like you kind of get an idea of like like from the beginning to the end, it's listing all the things that I've sold minus any discounts or paid outs that I have, right? To the point where I get a number that's my total to account for. And then all my tenders that have been collected are also accounted for here. And once I have all my tenders, my report balance should be 0. This one's got a report balance of a penny, some sort of balancing thing. You'll also see that there's like an over-short section typically. The site that this data comes from was not doing deposits irregularly, which is why they have an over-short, right? So it's sort of like if I do deposits in a regular way, I'm recording in my point of sale what I'm bringing to the bank, and then this will reflect that. If I don't do deposits, it's going to reflect that I don't do deposits, but it's still going to give me, here's what I should have for my total accounting. And compare that to like an Express Exterior. On the left is the first page of that one, and the right is just an Express Exterior where like it's the same period of time, like a whole month, but it's just one page essentially. There's another page that has the total to account for on the other side of this, so 2 pages total. One of the things you may notice about the general sales report, if you're not familiar, if you've never run this before, is that it runs like a little ticker tape almost, from the top to the bottom on the left-hand side, and then the right-hand side. And then there's an additional page. And part of the reason that's done is because of like density, being able to print as much as possible on a report. But it's also used in other ways, right? The format that we use for the general sales report can be run for 3 other different types of reports too. And I'll show you those real fast. And I also want to show you how things get onto the general sales report. Where is my virtual machine? There it is. So I've got this virtual machine that runs SiteWatch. And I've got a terminal controller. I'm going to have to reopen it though. And I'll log into Site Manager as well, just to show the general sales report from Site Manager. So just like in any sort of normal like workflow, right? Whether it's sales happening at the XPT or if I'm doing attended sales at like a terminal like this, either the XPT profile has to be active, or in the case of an attended terminal, I'm going to have to make sure that someone's clocked in and that the person who's going to be using this terminal is assigned as the current user for this terminal. Current user is like a catch-all that basically says I can do all the things that are necessary, right? Full service car wash may use more explicit roles for like a greeter versus a cashier, right? Cashier can take money, a greeter can sell things and put things into the sale. But I'm going to do everything, so I'm going to be a current user. So if I ring out my super wash, which is my better full service, for $18, and say I had somebody pay for it with cash, right? This is one $18 sale, and I've taken $18 in cash. At my car wash, I have, again, I'm full service, so I have some differentiation between like the base cost of a wash. Like I want to be able to say, okay, all my washes, the wash itself, here's the base price. Everything above it is extra dollars. So I actually have this split up in a way where my good full service is actually my base wash for my full service is actually being recorded at $15, and then the difference to get to the $18 for the customer is recorded separately under an item called better full service. That may not be the case for your wash. You may just have the one item that has value, but you can kind of see the power of SiteWatch here, that I could split those numbers up. And on the receipt, it just looks like $18. All right, so now I'm going to run my general sales report. So in Site Manager, I'm going to go to Reports, Sales Stats and Inventory, and General Sales. And I'm just going to run it for today. And you can see right here, I have good full service at quantity of 1 for $15, and I've got better full service at quantity of 1 for $3. So that's my $18 sale that I had. And you'll see further down that I've got under cash, I've accepted $18, and it shows as negative $18 because I have not done a deposit yet today, right? If I do a deposit, I'm just going to do a manual deposit for that $18. So I'm going to open a new sale, use my deposit lookup button, do a cash deposit for $18, cash it out. And I'm going to run the general sales report again. You'll see down here, my overshort does not show cash anymore because I've made a deposit of that amount of money, right? It's already been accounted for. I'm saying that $18 is being taken to the bank. And you'll see here too that my deposits show up as a separate line. So I know I've done those deposits. That $18 has been accounted for. And you'll see there's my total to account for, $18, and my deposit took away $18. So real basic stuff, right? The strength of this report is that if I'm looking at this every day, I kind of know what's normal. I know the items that I normally sell. I know the discounts that I see, whether they're coupons or automatic discounts. I know what I see on the report if I'm looking at this every day. And that sort of like by default being able to run it for today assumes that like at the end of the day, I'm going to print one. Again, you can run this from SiteWatch Web too. I'm going to open SiteWatch Web. I'm just using it on the computer itself, but I might go to sitewatch.cloud if I'm on a separate computer, or if I'm using a cell phone or something like that to access. Normally there's going to be a link on your desktop that you can use to access SiteWatch Web at the site, either in the manager station or on the server. I'll log in with my information. And I can run the same general sales report from financial reports and then general sales. And it runs in the exact same way. All the same options. It defaults to today for the entire day. And if I run it, I get a view that is very, very similar, but it's kind of like on the web browser. If I want to see the exact same printed report like I saw in Site Manager, I just have to make a PDF. And if I export a PDF, it's going to show the exact same report printed out like that. Okay, So I've got the same, my $18 in total cash taken. My total account for was $18 because I sold one better full service wash, which included these two items of value, right? Items are things that are configured either via buttons or via like automatic benefits that are assigned to a customer when they come into a lane at the wash, right? I pull up to an XPT, the loop in the ground detects the car, it turns on the FastPass reader, the FastPass tag's red, it's put into the sale, and automatic items come into the sale that give them the benefits for any plans or prepaids that they have that are linked to their customer records specifically. All those types of things are going to show up on the general sales report in some way or fashion and show the value of that service that was being provided, right? Again, monthly passes are going to show here's the wash, the type of wash that we get. And down here, like you'll have like an ARM plans redeemed. That shows the discount that's being applied to that wash to make it $0 for a free redemption, right? Unlimited washing. The benefit here is that I get a good idea of like just looking at this. What's my current mix for sales? What's my ARM redemption rate, right? I can kind of see, okay, I've redeemed, maybe I've done 100 washes. Redemptions have been 60 of them. I can see those kinds of things on the general sales report. Not in like a very strict way, but in a way that's like easy to relate, and I can see that these were actually in sales. Talking about the sale viewer again, right? If I run the sale viewer, which is only in SiteWatch Web, the sale viewer will, again, it defaults to running it for just today. The sale viewer defaults to running it for the created time during today. But if I wanted to look at it compared to a report, I would change created time to paid time, right? Reason for that is that a sale could have been made after the fact that was moved to that day, or I might have a sale that gets modified later on, or it's updated by multiple terminals. I just want to make sure that it's been paid on a particular day. That's when it will show up on that general sales report. So I'm going to hit Find Sales, and you can see I have all my sales and all the different information about them. You get the 11-digit sale ID, right, which is the same 11-digit sale ID that prints off when I ring a sale. It's also in here in my selected sale detail. You'll see that 11-digit sale ID. So this was 92193160481. That is this sale right here. So there's my sale that I did and my deposit for the $18. And you'll see that this actually, if I'm logged in, I can actually put in my terminal password and it'll bring up that sale on the terminal. But I'm not going to do that right now. I just wanted to show you this because to give you the correlation of like the things that I see on the general sales report relate directly to the sales that are in Sale Viewer. And specifically, the general sales report deals with the items that are sold, right? So the things that I put into the sale. Now the buttons that the buttons that I press may have multiple items that they bring into a sale. So using the sale viewer is a great way to understand what's going on the general sales report. If I hit a better full service button on my terminal, it pulls in a header, it pulls in 2 different items of value, it pulls in a bunch of things that do services in the tunnel. Okay. And I tendered it, so I have a cash/change item that's there. I'm just going to show you an XBT sale just to show you what that might look like too, because it'll be just slightly different. And the reason that it might be different is pretty much because of cash. And this will kind of go into like some of our cash reconciliation stuff later on too. I'm at the pay station. I actually have cash turned off, so let me turn cash on. I'm gonna turn on my bill acceptor, turn on my bill dispenser. All right, so now I can accept cash. Oh, actually, I need to do the acceptor too, I think. So, okay, I just added a $10 bill. So if I buy a wash, the best wash, I put $10 in beforehand, right? The XPT doesn't care if I put it in beforehand or if I put it in afterwards. I'm going to say no. It rings out. It gave me my Best Express, which is a little bit different wash because, again, I'm a full-service car wash. But it also gave me my full-service car wash comes with a rewash credit. So the rewash credit is also applied to the sale. That's a code from something else. Now, if I run this again, I could just reload the page, or I could rerun the filter. Just hit Find Sales. And you'll see that now it also has my PayStation transaction. And you'll note I paid with cash, so cash shows up a little bit differently for the XPT. You'll see this cash in all caps. If it gives out bills as the bill part of the bill dispenser, you'll see a separate change line too. And that's part of the reason for that is because XPTs have two pools of money in them, right? A cash drawer, I fill it with a certain amount of money. You know, people pay me and then I give them change. And it's all sort of like in the same fund, right? At the end of the day, I'm going to balance the drawer back to the way that it was, and I'm going to deposit everything above and beyond my initial value, right? Say if I have $150 in my cash drawer to begin with, I'm going to do all my cash transactions through the day. Maybe I need change. I take money out, bring it to the safe, get additional change. Maybe it has to go to the bank to do that. But at the end of the day, I balance it down and I say, here's $150. Everything above and beyond that is a deposit. Whereas with an XPT, I have two pools. I have the acceptor money, the money that goes into the acceptors, and I've got the dispenser money, the money that I'm putting into the dispensers to be able to dispense when someone puts a 20 in, right? For a $15 wash, I've got to dispense a 5 or 5 ones. All right, now pulling back a little bit, we kind of talked about how the things get onto the general sales report, and that's all related to the items that we sell, and specifically what the report categories those items are in. So if I've got washes, right, these basic washes that I sell, like a good full service, or the wash packages, like a better full service, they show up in the appropriate space on the general sales report, right? My wash sales has good full service, my wash packages has better full service. These reports are completely configurable, the general sales report formats. They're completely configurable. You can move things around. We can include or disclude things, but the site financial detail report should always include everything I sold. And if for some reason it doesn't, there's a line at the bottom of this report, which is a report balance, that will tell me if something's not represented on the report. If I have any value here, it means that something of value was in a sale that was discluded from this. If you have a report balance, call DRB support, call the Knowledge Center, and we'll be able to help you figure out what's going on there. Going back to our presentation, I want to talk a little bit about the operational reports. Now, operational reports, they work a little bit differently, right? If I can run this particularly a site operations report from Site Manager. That is a multi-page report that gives me a bunch of different sections, and I can choose which sections that I want to run. I can also run it from SiteWatch Web, where each of the sections is represented by a different report. Allow me to show you what that looks like. So if I go to Reports, Sales Stats and Inventory, and Site Operations in Site Manager, I'm just gonna run it for today. It gives me a report that tells me a whole bunch of different information about what's going on right now. So for instance, in this activity by date section, I get when was this my first sale of the day and when was my last sale of the day. To give a rough idea of, separate from my scheduled business hours, where did we begin and end the day at, right? Where do the sales actually begin and end? I also get a total count of the sales, And I can see, like for people who are clocked in, how many people worked over the course of the entire day, how many hours does their work represent, and is anybody in overtime? If I have wage rates specified on employees, it'll tell me the total labor dollars and what percentage that labor dollars is of sales, right? Pretty key metric for a lot of car washes, especially a full service, to be able to say, I understand that my labor costs this percentage of my business. And of course, an overshort. And then a breakdown of all the different profit centers I have and what those values are. This is going to correlate exactly to the information that you'll see in StatWatch. So if I'm looking at StatWatch, this uses the same pool of information. There's information about credit card activity, including sales and automatic recharges, and whether something is maybe unable to be processed because of like a drop in internet, right? Those kinds of things will be reflected here for traditional swipe processors. There are other reports for Vantiv EMV where you can have, if something has to be stored in the device and then forwarded later on. This is the key bit that I wanted to get into down here. This is the adjustments and security events, as well as the incompletes and the service counts. We'll start with service counts. Service counts are just a great way to see all the different services that we offer. That how many did the point of sale send over to the controller? Or if you don't have a controller, right, how many were actually performed for people? Right? Incompletes goes into this too. My car wash is not set up in a way where it's automatically dumping into a controller like Tunnel Watch or some other third-party product. It is set up in a way where I would have to manually mark those washes done. So that's why I have two sales where they're paid but they're not serviced. If you know anything about the status area for sales, if I start a new sale, add another better. And you'll see that the status shows as E:-PW. If I cash it out, it's now going to say I:-P-W. So the E:-PW, E stands for entered. The colon is like, it's sort of like if you were constructing a sentence out of this, right? That sale was entered, comma, and then the little dash details like what has not been done yet, right? Everything to the left has been done. Everything to the right has not been done of that little dash. So if I've got a sale which is E:-PW, P stands for paid, W stands for washed. There's also other letters for like a detail. If you have details or express details, there's D for detail, X for express detail. If you sell merchandise items like, trees or candy bars or greeting cards, those could be under the store profit center, which is S. So this is E:-PW. So it's entered, not paid or washed, right? The sale where we made a payment, this is incomplete, paid but not washed. Because it's been paid, it will show up on the general sales report, right? Because it's been paid, it will show up, because it's currently incomplete, it'll show up under incompletes here as paid and not serviced. And then once it goes through the tunnel, usually automatically, but I'm going to do it manually here. Oh, send services and finish services. Services are not yet sent to the crawler. EQ, send services, finish services. There we go. So now it says complete C:-P -W. So it's complete, paid, and washed, right? This is going to show as, it's not going to show up in this incompletes anymore. So if I'm looking at this incompletes area, it might tell me that there's some sort of breakdown if I'm seeing a lot of things that are paid but not serviced. Right? I want to be able to see, okay, why would we have sales that were paid but not serviced? Why did they not go through the tunnel? Maybe a customer had to pull out of the line. right? And then we had to adjust the queue. Maybe the queue got totally out of whack and we had to like pull a bunch of cars out and try to add them back in. This gives me insight into like what was happening there, and then I could go back and use the sale viewer, because the sale viewer will also reflect this information under the main status in sale viewer of like why that would not be complete. I can also filter for just incomplete sales in here as well. And it will also return the other types of incomplete too that are listed here. These other types of incomplete are rarer, but they are more important in terms of like, if I see this, I maybe want to look into it, right? Something that was serviced but not paid should not normally be possible at an express exterior car wash. It would be normal at a full service car wash. I put the car through the tunnel before the customer pays, right? Or I'm doing some service like an interior clean before the customer pays. Serviced and voided means that like we gave that customer's money back, or we removed this sale from the system. Voids are like basically a nix of the whole sale, and you shouldn't normally see voids unless we know we're doing like test washes or testing out a new configuration. Serviced only is a very specific function where you've got a queue of cars and you're looking at the car queue and you're saying that, okay, this car is this sale, but I just sent it down the tunnel, right? So like this guy bought a best wash. And says it should be a best wash that gets sent, but it's a better, and that best wash was just sent. There's a button function called reversed queue, which can pull the whole queue back so that it will you can send that car again. It marks it as being serviced twice, if that makes sense. You're not taking in or making another transaction, but you're doing some sort of like way of fixing the queue. That shows up as serviced only. There's also security events related to kiosks, right? Like I open the XBT door or I open the XBT vault, right? If you are doing cash deposits, normally they wouldn't be opening the vault very much, right? Except for when they're doing a deposit. They may open the door for all different kinds of reasons, right? Changing receipt printer paper, maybe fixing a jam in something, right? Like maybe there's a, if I have an older XPT, maybe I just need to reboot the thing, or there's a connection that was loose. Those kinds of things at least alert me to potential problems before they become actual problems. Other events here, like you see right here under denied and no sale, right? No sale is how often a cash drawer is being opened. Offline sales should not normally happen unless you're deliberately knowing what you're doing, trying to fix a sale for a previous day. Cash deletes and credit card deletes, again, shouldn't normally happen if the folks on site are trained well and they're understanding what the process should be for accepting cash, putting it into the system, letting the system tell it what it should have for change, and giving them change. I might see a credit card delete, like if somebody pays, they pay with a card, like a debit card, and it doesn't have enough money on it, so we have to refund the money that it did charge. So if my watch is $15, the customer only had $9 on their credit card, they swipe their credit card, it only approves $9. We would ask them to give us an additional tender to pay the difference, and if they couldn't, we'd have to delete and refund that credit card payment. Same thing for under adjustments. If there are any voids or editing of sales, they will show here, and the full value of them will be reflected and reversed, and also the quantity. This is the quantity. Here's the value. Okay, so if I have any edits, they show as reversed. If they get finished again, right, like I edited a sale, redo it, now it's going to show as repaid. So if I say a customer has a wash, they go through the wash and they're like, oh no, I have this coupon. Could I get the coupon for the wash that I just had? Absolutely. We can edit the sale, apply the coupon, give them a refund for $1, right? So that would show, for my $15 wash, it would show reversed of $15, repaid of $14. And then the abandoned amount would reflect the amount that we refunded, right? $1. If I voided a wash for $15, it would be $15 in reversed and $15 in abandoned. It gets a little bit hairy when someone's editing the same sale over and over and over again. Like if we had adjusted a sale multiple times, each one's going to show as a quantity here, and it's also going to show as that reversed or repaid amount. So we'll inflate that number. So it's great. Sale Viewer is a great place to go and find and look for what's actually happening here. So this is the operations report. In SiteWatch Web, these same bits are broken up into a whole section here under operations reports. So if I want to look at employee security, would give me the same information as the adjustments and security events sections, as well as those incompletes, right? So I get the same information presented here, and I can also print it off same as I would normally. If I want to be able to see like the service counts are like, again, they're this section down here at the bottom. How many times do we actually send this over to the controller? I want to audit this against my controller system. I can look at those counts right there and I can see those. How many were programmed as part of a normal wash? How many were canceled, right? Removed from the controller. There's functions for that. If I delete the car that's at the head of the queue, it would show as a cancel. Enforced is like retracts, right? All retracts should normally show as forced. Things that are not retracts should not, or maybe someone set up a button function that was used to send this. That's normal for testing, but it wouldn't be normal for everyday operations. Service counts gives us that same information, and then all the financial stuff is available under the activity by date and profit center. So if I want to compare, if I'm looking at StatWatch and I see numbers and I want to dig into those numbers, I could run the activity by date and profit center for a period of time to be able to see, okay, what else can I see about those numbers? And yeah, there's an example of a filled out site operations report. Now we're going to skip around a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about the stats comparison report. So that I talked about how that site operations report uses a different set of information to build out like counts and amounts there than the general sales report does. The general sales report uses the items that are sold. Statistic reports like the stats comparison use items too, but they use them in a different way. For example, I can't run stat reports from SiteWatch Web, but I can run them from Site Manager. So if I run reports, sales, stats, and inventory, and then stats comparison, and by default, this is set to labor statistics. I'm going to run it for sales statistics for today by hour. I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to show how many, like this is going to show the counts and amounts for the sales that I have. Okay, you'll see that it says there was $46 in total sales. If I run the newest general sales report, it should say something very similar for its total to account for. $46, right? The stats comparison is different because it's using a different set of information. So if I look at this sale where this better full service was sold, it shows that there were different items that were sold in the sale. There was a $15 item and a $3 item, and those are reflected on the general sales report, right? They're right here at the top. I had a $15 item and I have a $3 item sold. But the information that the stat reports and StatWatch uses is different. If I hit this little script I to see the detail of the sale, you'll see that instead of using those individual items, there's these accumulations that are recorded, like this sales amount for $18 was paid, and the sales amount for $18 of washes was in the sale, right? And of that $18, $3 was considered the extra dollar amount. And you can see there's a programming of the services. There's a bunch of information in here about what actually happened, right? This is the kind of stuff that is very simple tabular data that can be streamed places, and that's how StatWatch works. It gets streamed up to a server where this could be used and utilized, it updates continuously, and you essentially have up to the minute information. Maybe it's 5 minutes behind. So instead of saying one thing for $3, one thing for $15, it's just a number that says there was one sale that counts as a sale. It counted as a car, and it's also bucketed into what's called total car. I could differentiate between counted car and total car by changing groups on items. This actually goes into the way my washes are set up. My better full service has this stat extra service group on it, so that the $3 that is represented by this item counts as an extra service. And my good full service, which made up the kernel of this, has these stat groups: stat counted car and stat total car. I may have like a promotional version of the good full service I give away for free as part of my details. Maybe that does not have stat total. Maybe it doesn't have stat total car on it, or maybe it doesn't have stat counted car on it, right? I don't want it to go into one of those groups. I can adjust that. That's the way these reports work. Now, the beauty of these stat comparisons reports, or StatWatch in general, is that they run really quickly. They run for, like, you can run them for a year and it will come up with the data very, very quickly because of that data format that it's using, right? That tabular data is very suitable to being aggregated quickly. I can also run the report for, if I run it for like a long range of time, say I run it for the entire spring, right? If I run it from March 19th to, first day of summer would be June 20th, right? So I run it from March 19th to June 20th. I'd run that and I could see, okay, what does, it look like by hour for each of those days? Instead of showing me like the totals, just show me the average. When I run that stats comparison report, I can say, show me sales statistics, which is essentially the different fields that are available here. This is the labor statistics, so it has labor fields. It's like a cross tab in Excel or a pivot. So I run sales statistics and I run it by hour. I'm going to run it for a bigger period of time. I'm going to run it from the beginning of the year. And I'm going to look for the average Tuesday. What does the average Tuesday look like? Oh, I can't have today if it's by hour, so I'm going to change that to yesterday. So this shows me what my average Tuesday looks like. Now, I don't use this database very often, so there's not a ton of information here, but this gives you an idea of, like, by hour, what would this look like? And I could get a lot of insights that way. An example would be wondering what I should staff, right, for spring. What did we do for car counts last spring? What did we do for car counts last year on this month, right, or around this holiday? What were our car counts looking like? There's lots of different ways you can run stat reports. I highly recommend, if you're in Site Manager has built-in help that you can use in Site Manager. You go to Help Topics, and you can look in here for statistics reports. So do stats comparison. And there's information in here about running stats comparisons reports. So some of these different ones, sales statistic format. So that's the sales statistics format that I was running. It tells you the fields, tells you how each of the numbers is calculated for that period of time. Here's an example of running it for a range of days done by day, right? So I can very quickly get a good view of, what do my numbers look like? And of course, at the bottom, it does give you an average as well as the total for the range. So technically, the Knowledge Center may use this to see if there was any sort of like gaps in days that you guys were open. This easy way to run this report. You can run it by employee, so I could see, like, how do employees stack up to each other. I do have to choose a sales role, so like wash sales. Let's talk a little bit about, like, there's a separate labor statistics report that you can run, but it gives you a lot of the same information, but gives you more control over how it's aggregated. Like, you can choose what data to show and how to group it. Right here under employee data, you can choose, how do I want to group this? I want to group it by employee number and then name, or I want to group it by name and then, department and then employee number. All that kind of stuff is in there. And you can get those very straightforward. Here's how many hours we had, how much that cost, and what the grand total is. Sale Viewer used to be able to be run in SiteWatch Web. Site Manager, but now it only exists in SiteWatch Web. And that's because over the years, SiteWatch is 25 years old, right? There's been more added to what can happen in a sale. So the sale viewer in SiteWatch Web accommodates for all these, whereas the other one does not. So it's been disabled on Site Manager version, SiteWatch version 23 and above. Okay, so if you have an older version of SiteWatch Web, or older version of SiteWatch, you'll see the version on the left. If you have a newer version, as in the past, 8 years or so, you'll see the one on the right. Now, with SiteWatch Web, which is 100% the best tool for reporting, like completely remotely, right? If I go to sitewatch.cloud, I can access this sitewatch.cloud from anywhere. And what sitewatch.cloud does is I have to register on site first. And then once I have my employee number and web passcode specified when I register, this is the local version here. I'm going to just show you what that register looks like if you've never seen it before. I need to log out. Here you can put in your employee number and your terminal passcode, and then put in a new web password and confirm it. Once that's set up and you've accessed SiteWatch Web for the first time locally, you're going to be able to access it from SiteWatch Cloud if given the appropriate permissions to do so. And quite literally, it's just I have to sign in with the same credentials, and I'll have to specify my location code. So for instance, my name and state for the organization, and the last 3 letters that denote my specific location. I'm wrapping up here. So SiteWatch Web includes all those financial reports that we had, including things like the bank deposits report, which shows me all of the cash that I've deposited, whether it was by doing a deposit at the XPT or if it was by manually doing a deposit for a cash drawer. It's going to show me general sales. It's going to give me a place where I can see my cash audits for XPTs. I've got loyalty reports, which are related to like plans and accounts, different promotions. I've got my past plan reports. I'm just going to show you the member analysis report real quick. Member analysis would be like a full listing of all the members that I have in my system. Plan analysis is what are the mix of plans that they have, and the activity of the plan that are happening, right? How many people at the beginning of this rolling 30-day period were in the account at the beginning of that, right? How many joined, how many transferred in, how many transferred out, how many were terminated or are discontinuing or were discontinued in that period of time. So there's a lot I can see from SiteWatch Web, right? This is going to take, these are like actual reports. When I run it from sitewatch.cloud, it actually reaches down to the site and runs it at the site. So it's going to depend on my connection over the internet. It's going to depend on the what's going on at the site and like waiting for the data to be processed for this report on site. It's running very quickly now because I have very little data, right? But if I want to go on to StatWatch, let me bring up StatWatch real fast. StatWatch runs very, very quickly all of the time because it's using that streaming data. Let me find my password here. StatWatch is going to give me a very quick, up-to-the-minute glimpse as to what's going on, right? So I can get my car counts, my sales dollars per car, my extra dollars per car, or alternately, instead of the extra dollars per car field, I can get a total dollars field that can be displayed there. And I'm able to see that, and I can either look at it from the context of the entire site or from one particular profit center. So for instance, Wash in this case, right? If I'm just looking at Wash, it's going to show me the value of all the washes that I've done. You'll see that my car wash did 29 washes at 10 a.m., so we're way off our projections, but that's great. Projections are really cool too. They're based off of how many cars you're washing today, and they're adjusted several times a day. Also, the last 6 weeks, as well as last year, and which day of the week it is. Because, right, it's not just matching up the date, it's matching up to this week last year on the Monday, on the Tuesday rather. And also what the weather's having happen right now, right? Has the weather been sunny? Has it been drab and rainy, right? That's going to, all those things go into our projection. But if I'm looking at just the wash profit center, it's showing me the full value of the washes that were sold, right? I got 6 washes, and this is how many washes I've done this total month, right? And my sales dollars per car reflects the value of the washes, but not necessarily my redemptions for monthly passes. If I look at Site Arm, this has been adjusted for the redemptions of monthly passes. So it takes into account the sales of monthly passes and the redemptions as well. And you'll see there's ARM statistics down here. Again, all this information gets collated in lots of different ways. There, I can look at specific sales information for today or for other days to see how am I doing? Am I up? Am I down compared to yesterday, right? The same period of time. Or how am I doing if I go to a different period of time, like say the 10th of March, we're actually up from that period of time, right? There's also the compare, where I can compare today versus that previous day, or the average for a month, or I can look at this like last year and see how are we actually doing compared to that. So I'm nowhere close right now. Or no, last year I had no numbers. I see now. And I can change the display difference to be a percent difference or a value difference. There's labor reporting that works in the very same way. And then there's the almanac, which is my favorite part of StatWatch, where I can just go back and look at a particular day. So if I want to look at a particular day in March last year, it'll actually just tell me like weather. I can look it up and I can see the car counts directly from here. I can see if we're open or closed. The red means we were closed. If I wash no cars on that day, or if I manually specify, hey, we were actually closed this day, or we were only open for half day, I can see why and save that information in StatWatch. It's pretty cool. And it gives me some like gamification, like some perspective on the thing. Today's wash is in the 18th percentile of all of my wash days over the past month or so, right? That's not great. It's down, we're in the bottom 20 days. So I can go through and say, you know what? The people who are working right now, maybe I send somebody home. So I could say, oh, Taylor's the only one in here, right? Who's coming in later on? Nobody. And is anybody in overtime? Nope, nobody's in overtime. So if someone else comes in, not a big deal. Yeah, StatWatch, super important. It's not just the website. Like I was on StatWatch.com, the website. It's also a mobile phone application. Works in a very, very similar way for iPhone and Android. Okay. And that is pretty much that is the end of my presentation. Okay, so now we're at the end here. What kind of questions do you have, Griffin? Do you have any particular things that you have like hanging there? Member churn, yes. Let me bring that up real fast here. So if I want to see churn is specifically going to be in SiteWatch Web. And if I'm looking at past plan reports, right, there's a report here that's called Trends and Comparisons, which can be run specifically to look at churn. So if I look at trends and comparison over either the past month or the past year from a particular date, so like looking back over a month, looking back over a year, I can then choose all these different statistics that I want to have displayed on a graph. So if I'm looking at churn, that's a percentage. You'll see that I can, if I've got counts selected, I can only select counts. It'll block out the other ones. So I want to choose pass wash. I can choose pass wash percentage, but I want to just look at churn right here. And then when I run that, mine's going to show almost nothing. just because I haven't had anybody churn out of a plan. There you go. So this is 30 days and how many people churned out of a plan, right? Pretty normal would be that 3 to 13, 15% range, right? That's a pretty wide range, but that's like where it can be normally. And you can kind of compare that to like some of the different ameliorations you use for churn, right? If I am fairly hands-on, I've got a full service car wash, I'm connecting and interacting with people. Maybe I have people on site who are talking to people and trying to get them to re-sign back up again or to update their credit card, those kinds of things, right? If I'm hooked up to something like Suds or Rinsed or some other like CRM proactive external contact solution, I'm going to compare it to like the reports that they have on their site and like see how the things that I'm doing with text messages, emails, how they're fixing and ameliorating churn, right? I could talk about churn all day. But yeah, this is where you'd look up churn. So again, it was under past plan reports and then trends in comparison. You can also see it if you're on the plan analysis report. And if you look into one of these here, like I can look at like a particular plan or look at all plans for the month or the year that I run it for. And then when I run it, I can click on the trends button here to see the trends for things, and then I can adjust this to show me, instead of counts, show me churn. It's run for the same period of time for the same plan. You'll see it passed forward. It passed the plan through as part of that. Okay. Any other questions? We're 1 minute over, but like, yeah, if you run it by year, I think it does give you a month. Yeah, it goes by month. Yep, so if you run it by the year, it will show you each month. Other kinds of information about membership, like longevity or like how people drop out of the plan, would also be available in the member analysis. This isn't specifically like a report, right? It's more of like a view of all the records. But I do see like there is a column in here of months a member, which will show you how long they've been in the plan, right? So if somebody, I can filter this specifically for different statuses. Discontinuing, discontinued, terminated. Those are not considered problems, so I'd want to like look into those. I'd look into each one individually, and I can see the people who are discontinued this month, you know, how long were they a member for? That's kind of like more insight into like what's happening with churn. It also gives you the last 4 of the credit card, I think, in here too. Up right here. So the credit card will show first 5 or first 6 and last 4. So you can say, oops, in the expiration, they expired. That makes sense. You know, whether I want to get, and this is also a great place to action from if I want to call somebody, right? I've got their phone number and their email displayed right here. Okay. Anything else? Anything you can think of? All right, we'll go ahead and end this here. Thanks for attending. Again, if you have any questions or thoughts, you can always reach out to us at training@drb.com, or like there's also where you signed up for DRB University. There's also on our website, there's also a link for custom training available there too. Have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see you soon.